First order of business is roll call. Let's see. Mary, are you present?
Here.
Here. Rachel.
Here.
Will.
Here.
And then we are myself, Don Robertson. We have our staff person, Sarah, and we have Tracy joining us. And hopefully we will be joined by Makoto and Sarah and David very soon. But rather than waiting, we do have a lengthy agenda. And so we, I see Kathleen is eavesdropping with us tonight too. Kathleen Walker from City Council. So with that, why don't we go ahead and move on? Is there a motion, or has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Is there a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'm still not on for last meeting.
The last meeting,
okay.
the last meeting minutes are not attached, Mary. Those are
No,
not
the
those.
one before.
Yeah, so you should be, when I pull it up, you're there.
When I printed it out, I wasn't.
Okay. Oh, from the 14th, I cannot go back, but you'll see a note that says you were present. But once
Okay.
you were added to the back end, now you appear and you'll show in the normal roll call area. But for the meeting minutes on the 14th, I put a note that you were in attendance, just to make sure that was noted.
Okay, I was beginning to get a little paranoid there.
Do we have a motion for approval?
Motion for approval.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. All righty. Moving on. Find my place here. Are there any changes to the agenda? Don't see any changes to the agenda. There's David. Welcome,
Hi, David.
Hello.
So let's jump right up to public comment. We have one member of the public with us today, Eric.
Okay, I got the right button. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and Eric, did you want to speak during public comment, or are you here for the dog issue?
I'm here for the dog issue.
Okay, that is 7.1, so hang around and we'll get to it as quickly as we can.
Okay, no
Hey,
problem.
Don, I did tell Eric he could comment on that agenda item during the public comment period. So he doesn't need to stay around if he doesn't want to. Up to
Eric,
you,
I will
Eric.
leave that up to you then. Do you want to speak now or wait till the...
Don, I can wait.
Are you sure?
Yes.
We're probably a good 90 minutes away.
Well, if you don't mind me speaking, that would be great.
No problem. I'm going to ask that you limit it to about 3 minutes, please.
Okay. There has been no improvement since the last time we talked. I am at my point to where I think I'm going to just stand back. Nothing's being done. I have sent many emails to code enforcement and have had several phone calls. There's been warnings issued, but the people continue to do what they do in the park. They've been asked to put dogs on leashes, so they are now using about 50-yard ropes that they're tying off to trees and allowing the dogs to run the entire field. So that's their way of saying it's on a leash. I am at my point now to where I don't know which direction to go, and I was told basically that code enforcement didn't know what to do, and he was going to turn it over to a supervisor. So the issue is only getting worse because it's getting nicer outside. And I am now just going to kind of stand back, and I've let you folks know and allow you folks to discuss it and come up with a plan. It's frustrating as living in the community. It's frustrating as a resident, and it's caused a lot of grief among a lot of people within the community. And people are going back and forth to each other in the neighborhood now. So it's become a livability issue. So that's all I have.
All righty. Thank you very much. Mary, you have a question?
Isn't there a leash law and it's only allowed to be 6 feet?
The leash
I'm
law,
gonna refer that to staff.
yeah, the
Sarah?
leash law that I have been told, I don't know about 6 feet, but a normal leash is about 6 feet long.
Right.
The law in,
Well, I'm gonna let or Eric, I'm sorry. Eric, I'm gonna let Sarah try and answer that question for us
Okay.
specifically.
sure.
No, I don't know that it specifies, but I will look that up before we get to that agenda item. I did look at it a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure that it specifies length, but there's certainly a presumption that it's not 50 feet long.
I mean,
I
I
wouldn't
know
think so.
as a dog trainer, we were told not to use the retractable leashes because they're so long, and to always recommend a 6-foot leash. Because somebody with the retractable, if they've got their dog out there, there's no way that they can control their dog, just like tying them up to a tree.
Right.
Exactly, and that's the concern, is that by putting them on it's about a 50-yard rope, nylon rope that they're using. It covers the entire both sides of the field,
Okay.
and that shows no control of their animal at all.
Okay. Okay. We do have this on the agenda for
Okay.
tonight. We will get to it. We do have a paid consultant that's paid by the hour listening to our conversation here. So what I would like to do is hold off until we get back to the regular agenda item. You're welcome to stay with us, Will, if you like, or if not, maybe we can follow up with you with a phone call or something.
Yeah, either that or Sarah could reach out to me with an email. That would be fine.
We'll do that.
I sure thank you very much, everybody, for having me and letting me speak.
No problem. And to the rest of the board, we will continue this discussion at the appropriate time. Right now, I'd like to go ahead and move into the Parks and Trail Master Plan. Tracy. Actually, Sarah, do you have any opening comments? You're muted, Sarah.
I was just trying to look up the leash law there. I just want to thank Tracy for all of her time and effort and the time she spent with us. And the board has an opportunity tonight to, as it's in the staff report, to provide your input to the Planning Commission and to council as they begin to review the master plan. So looking forward to the discussion tonight. And Tracy, thank you for being here once again to give us this final overview.
Great. Sarah, can I get permission to share?
Oh, certainly.
I forgot about that until I went to go do it.
I think I can. Hold on here. I've done it before, right?
Yeah.
Where's my little... Okay, you should be able to share now.
Perfect. Looks like it worked.
We don't see it yet. Oh, there we go. Okay.
I wanted to get it sharing before I transition to slideshow. So this has been a little bit buggy in the past. So hopefully, can you guys see that now? You see the cover page? Okay.
Yes.
So this, for those of you who have sat through 2 prior conversations, this will be a refresher. I feel like there might be I'm not sure that Rachel was with us for both of the presentations last time. So I am going to breeze through this so that we have time for discussion and questions and things like that. But I wanted to give you guys a refresher overview. So I will commence on that. So just as Sarah said, for anybody that I haven't met before, my name's Tracy Johnson. I'm a landscape architect with Environmental Science Associates. I've been working with the city of Sandy for about 15 months, give or maybe a little bit longer than that. Time flies, I guess, on this park and trail system master plan. And we've gone through a range of processes to get to the proposed master plan that we have in front of us. So Chapter 1 is the introduction chapter to the report, and it kind of sets the stage for what master plan is, the area that we're looking at for the master plan, progress we've made since the last master plan. So this image is showing you the planning area. So the darker yellow or orangey areas are the city limits, which is of course where the primary population is today. We also include the urban growth urban growth boundary and the urban reserve areas to plan for future population growth, because this plan is intended to go for at least 15 years. It should extend through the 2035 horizon. So we're planning for population growth through 2035, and we expect that the population will expand into those urban growth areas. So when we get into some of the mapping, you'll see we are actually forecasting for potential park acquisitions in some of these white fringe areas around the perimeter of town. So the second chapter of the report is the community profile, and this includes demographics, the current population, the forecast population, and some summary of how the demographics of the city today, how it's changed since the last master plan. I should say the last master plan was done in 1997, and so it's over 20 years old, and most of the tasks that were identified or the priorities that were identified in that plan have been completed. And so it was important to do a master plan update because the community has changed a lot in that time. It's grown a lot in that time, and we need a new plan to, look forward for the future.
Tracy, which page are you on right now?
Which page am I on? What do you
I
mean?
see City of Sandy Park and Trail Systems Master Plan, the cover sheet still.
Really? You guys aren't seeing my screen advancing?
No.
We're on page 1.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh dear. Let me do. That is so, gosh, this is just, it's always a little buggy, isn't it? So I'm going to try sharing again. I'll reshare. So right now, are you guys seeing chapter 1?
Yeah,
Yes.
chapter 1 introduction.
Yes.
And now if I advance, do you see chapter 2 or
Yeah.
page?
We see planning area.
Okay, perfect. So now this makes more sense, what I just said about the map. Sorry, it looked like it was sharing to me, so I don't know.
Oh, you're good.
Anyway, so as I had said, this is our planning area. The large black boundary is our entire planning area, and we're planning for future growth. There wasn't too much exciting stuff yet, so you guys didn't miss much except for that map. So one of the big elements of a park and trail system master plan update is community outreach. A big component of this is finding out what people think you need now, what they want, hopes and dreams, talking to people. So we've done a lot of different ways. We've looked at a lot of different ways to reach out to the community. We've had a couple of public open houses that were in person before COVID shut everything down. We had one online open house in the fall last year to help get input on the progress we had made since the spring. We also conducted about 8 stakeholder interviews back early in the process, and those stakeholders included sports, active sports groups, biking, skateboarding, community garden, Hispanic population. We talk to a lot of different groups, and usually we talk to several people with, several different representatives of different groups in each of those stakeholder meetings to get like a wide array of input. And then along with our online and our in-person open house, we've had surveys that we've conducted. There were a number of surveys that were done before we started the process that were like, as this project was gearing up, the city did a couple of surveys. And then with each of our presentations, we've also asked questions for input from the people as far as, what do you like to do in a park? What are your top activities? What would you like to see in a park? What do you like? What do you dislike? Things like that. And so that helps us to get input and start to think about, things that we might not have initially thought of that might be important to the community. So chapter 3 of the report is the existing park system. And so, at this point, we take the opportunity to do an inventory of what do we have currently. So this is the existing park and trail inventory map. It's rather small on the screen, but I am confident that you all have the copy that Sarah sent out to you last week. So it's an 11 by 17 flyout page in the report, or at least that's the intention. And so this is showing the different parks that we have in the current park system. They are color coded. The legend is cropped on this screen right here, but the purple parks are neighborhood parks. The red parks, which are very, very small, are mini parks. Here, actually, this laser pointer gave me a little bit of trouble last time, but it's great for pointing. So let's see how it goes. So we have a few mini parks that are red in different parts of town. We have purple neighborhood parks. We have these bright green turquoisey, which are our community parks. Special use areas are the orange. And then we have natural areas, which are the dark green and kind of the sagey green along the Tickle Creek corridor. And so one of the things that you do in a, you think about your parks, what type of classifications of parks do we have? And how much of each of those do we have, and how much do we think we need or want? And so it's important to have an assortment of park types because different park types serve different types of needs. So mini parks usually serve a pretty small neighborhood area that's close walking distance to the park. It's going to be a small playground, picnic table, bench, pretty simple. A neighborhood park is usually a little bit bigger. It serves a little bit larger neighborhood, but it's still generally walk or bike to about a half-mile service area. And it has maybe more picnic tables, a larger playground, maybe a picnic shelter, plus a few additional activities like a sport court, or in the case of Bornstead, a splash pad, or a dog park like you have at Sandy Bluff. And then community parks are generally more of an active use park. They're a larger park. They usually have support facilities like parking and restrooms, so that people can drive from longer distances to get to them. And then they have things that people might want to drive to get to, like a skate park, which is the destination, or a sports field, which is the destination. And so that's what you're seeing when you look at this sort of map, is you're seeing the diversity of park types and the distribution around the community. And then the last thing I'll say on this is that these brown dashed lines are the different trails in the current network. So you can see, obviously, Tickle Creek Corridor has a really nice long trail segment, but there are some gaps. And then we have some nice trails over on the north side. But one of the things that we heard a lot in the public outreach is people would really like to have a more continuous trail network that potentially allowed you to connect throughout town and around town. So let's see if I can get this to advance now. I'm going to turn off my laser pointer because I think it really kills my screen ability. So this is just a summary of the parks and the types of parks, quantity of parks and acreage that you have currently. And this is all in the report. And so this basically correlates with what I just showed you on the map. So then we take all of that information and we go to the next chapter, which is level of service and needs assessment. Now, level of service is how we look at how much parkland we have for our community. And so you can see this table includes those classifications of park types that I'd mentioned, the different park types. It includes the total acreage that you have currently for each of those park types. And it also looks at developed acres, because sometimes you have land that hasn't been developed into a park yet. So for example, under neighborhood parks, you have about 5 acres of undeveloped parkland, 4.5 actually. And under community parks, you have about 14 acres or 13 acres that is kind of undeveloped, which is the Sandy Community Campus. It's semi-usable, but it's not really meeting its full potential. So we've classified it as undeveloped because it doesn't really have nearly the level of amenities that you would expect for a community park. So anyway, so we look at these total acreages and we also look at developed acres. And then we use those numbers to calculate our current level of service. And so this is basically doing some math. We look at how many acres per 1,000 of population we have in each park type. And so what you see here is, for example, under mini parks, we have about 0.33 acres of mini park per 1,000 of population, or neighborhood parks, we have about 1.8 acres per 1,000. So then we look at, I'll skip over the developed level of service. We looked at the developed level of service also just to get us an idea of how, where there might be a difference. So 1.8 acres per 1,000 is actually pretty good for neighborhood parks, but it's actually, as far as usable parkland that's already been developed, it's a little bit lower than that, because there's some undeveloped in there. And then we take those numbers that we've calculated and we compared them to the goals that were set in 1997 as one metric to compare against. And also we compared them against the SCORP, which is the State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. And so that's where the state parks for Oregon and most states pulls together reams of information. They do what we did for the city of Sandy, but they do it for the whole state. They pull together all of these different communities, and then they put together averages and estimates of what our potential, what the range of parks different agencies are providing. And so this is another thing that we can compare ourselves to. And so you can see if you look at our current level of service for mini park, we're actually doing better than our goal from 1997. And we're right in the middle of the range for what SCORP recommends for that park classification type. So that's really good. Mini parks, we're doing really well. Neighborhood parks, similarly, if you look at our total level of service, we're a little above our goal. And we're right in the middle of the SCORP range. Where we seem to be doing a little bit less well is under community parks. We're at about 2 acres per 1,000 for total, but for the developed, because we have sort of a mostly undeveloped community campus, we're only at 1 acre per 1,000. Both of these are below our goal from last time, and they're at the very low end or below the range that's recommended by SCORP. So this is one way that we look at level of service. We compare ourselves to our goals last time and statewide, averages to see how we fall compared to other communities. Overall, Sandy's doing pretty well, but what this tells us is that community parks are something that we might want to focus on. And trails we've included down here at the bottom. Trails were not included in the 1997 master plan as far as having a target, but the state average is 0.5 to 1.5 miles per 1,000 population. Another way we look at level of service is looking at service areas. And so this is a service area map for neighborhood and mini parks. And so what you see here is you can kind of see we have a string of little mini parks that are these yellow 1/4 mile service areas. And so those are intended to be, primarily serving people who are walking distance within a 1/4 mile. And then we have these aqua 1/2 mile service areas around neighborhood parks. And those are intended to serve people who are walking distance or biking distance to those parks. In addition to that, we have 4 undeveloped neighborhood parks that have potential service areas, and those are crosshatched. So Champion Way Park over here, Ponderlane, which is a pretty new acquisition that's come online since I've been working on this project, Deer Point, and up here we included the Sandy Community Campus as, while it's a community park, it also has the potential to serve a neighborhood park function for this neighborhood on the north side of 26. And so you can see if all of our existing neighborhood parks and the undeveloped parks are developed, we have pretty good service area coverage. Most of the main part of town and the city limits, and even a good bit of the urban growth boundary, will be covered. We still have some gaps around the edges, which we don't need to plan for those yet. So that's okay. It's okay where we don't have a lot of population to not have parks there yet. What you do see is there's a gap in the interior, a close-in gap here. And we also have some gaps around the edges in different places. One other thing to note about this, so this service area map is just talking about neighborhood and mini parks that are within walking distance of people. And so one of the things that we look at also is barriers to access. So you guys have a couple of barriers. We have Highway 26, which is obviously pretty substantial, and Highway 211, which is also significant. And I think in some ways, because you have signalized intersections that cross Highway 26, we included it as a barrier because people, a mom's not going to send her kid to the park across Highway 26, even if there's a crossing signal. But at least you can get back and forth across 26 in some places. Highway 211 is worse because there really are no safe crossings and people travel at a high rate of speed. So that's something that we take into account now when we're looking at how we're doing, and then we think about it when we get to our recommendations later in the report. So then what we do is, so we look at the service area, we look at the level of service, and then we take that information and we start to look at it from a needs perspective. And so this is looking at setting a new target level of service for our new plan. So we're adjusting our numbers from what we had last time. And then once we do that, what that does is it tells us how many acres we need now for today's population, how many acres we need for the future population, which population growth we're planning for about 8,000 more people. So Sandy currently has 11,650, and we're planning for 19,000 in 2035. And then we have added a column that's the cumulative current need plus future need is the total we need for the planning horizon. And so We worked through these numbers with the Technical Advisory Committee, which I don't think I mentioned that during the public outreach, but one of the things we did is we had 6 Technical Advisory Committee meetings throughout the process that helped guide us and make, you know, was another form of our public input and helped frame this plan that's in front of you today. So what we did is we looked at where we are currently, and we looked at what we heard from the community in the public outreach, and we made, and also from the city staff and others, and we made some, I'm going to turn off my pointer because it's not working again. You guys see those stray red dots? Anyway, and so what we did is we made some recommendations. And so we estimated that while we're doing really well on mini parks, they're a high maintenance cost because they're small and they need a lot of maintenance, and each park is like its own trip. It's more efficient to go to one larger park than several small parks. So while they're serving an important need in the current park system, we don't want to focus on those as much. So we're actually setting our target level of service at less than what we have currently available, which means that we have a surplus, which is why this first number is negative. For future growth, we'll need about 1.8 acres, but because we have a surplus, our total actually is only 0.9. For neighborhood parks, we have a few service area gaps that we're aware of, and neighborhood parks are important to the community. So since we reduced mini parks, we decided to focus more on neighborhood parks. So we've increased that target level of service a little bit. Community parks, because again, we have a deficiency in community park acreage, and we also have a deficiency in ball fields and larger active uses. We decided to bump our target up on that one to, or that's what we're proposing anyways, to help serve the needs for active recreation in the community. And so this is where we are. And so this, like the level of service and the needs analysis, this is what frames all of the recommendations that come forward in chapters 5 and 6, which are the last 2 chapters that we'll talk about in a minute. I'm going to pause and just see if anybody has any questions about this before we move on.
Yeah, I had a quick question. On the current trail inventory of 7.52 miles, does that include Sandy River Trail and all the?
That's actually current acres of need, or current miles of need, I should say. So this is,
I'm sorry. Never mind.
Yep.
I'm good. Thanks.
Nope, that's all right. That's all right. It's important. So these numbers, what these numbers are calculating is they're calculating our target level of service times our current population minus what we have now. And so then our current need would be what we still need right for today's population. And then the future need is what we need for the future growth. Any other questions? Okay, I will move on. So the last thing that we looked at, in addition to, you know, we like to look at it from a bunch of different ways so we can make sure we're thinking of everything. So one other thing that we look at is different types of recreation facilities or amenities that you can include in a park. So this is like, you can see the specific pieces of the park, not just the park acreage, but what do you put in the park? And so this is, again, something that we looked at what we have now, and we looked at the statewide recommendations from the SCORP. And so these, because they're parsed smaller, so the numbers are much smaller, but they look at them, you know, how many picnic shelters do they recommend per 1,000 people? And so we looked at what we have currently. And so I kind of color coded this because there's a lot to see here, but the green things are generally things where we are meeting or exceeding the SCORP recommendation. And pink things are things that we are currently not meeting and we have a need. So day use picnic areas, for example, is something that we could use more of. And these are also kind of sorted into standard park facilities and optional park facilities, because, you know, a lot of these things, the things that are in the first half of the list are commonly provided in most park systems, and optional facilities are sort of specialty items that may or may not be provided in every community. So this is another way that we look at particularly our current need. What are the things that we're lacking in or low in currently that we want to make sure we focus on as we start to develop parks, so that we can start to like fill these gaps and provide a more well-rounded park system for the community. So then we move into chapter 5. So chapter 5 is the recommendations chapter. And I won't go into all of the recommendations. It's not I mean, you know, we discuss recommendations for a number of the existing parks that need various improvements or have future phases that have never been developed. So for example, phase 2 of Bornstedt, additional improvements at Sandy River Park, particularly a trailhead, additional trail improvements, improvements at Sandy Bluff, improvements at Meinig, Tupper. And then we also talk about a proposed park system. So I'll show you the proposed park system map in a second, and proposed trail system. We also talk about some policy and code revisions. So there's some recommendations to reevaluate some of the funding streams and some of the code sections related to parks and recreation in the city of Sandy. And that information is included in the recommendation section. And we also talk about operations and maintenance. So we talk about staffing levels, staffing recommendations, and so this recommendations chapter is the place where there's kind of like the laundry list of all the things we want to do in this park plan moving forward over the next 15 years. So this is the proposed park system map, which is a part of chapter 5. And I apologize that it is a little bit small. It's also a little pixely in this version for some reason. So what you can see here is, we've color coded these symbols again to correlate with the colors that we used on our original inventory. So the pink symbols are neighborhood parks. Those are proposed new neighborhood park locations. The turquoise symbols are proposed potential new community parks, and the pink or red symbols rather are new proposed mini parks. Now this is not intended to target a specific parcel. These are supposed to give a general geographic location. And so, thinking back to our service area map, let me turn on my pointer, see if it'll work for me again now. What the service area map showed was some gaps around the perimeter. And so you can imagine that, as the city of Sandy builds out, population is going to grow in these perimeter areas. And so we're proposing neighborhood parks in these different areas to help provide a service area coverage for these new future neighborhoods. Some of these neighborhood parks will be dependent. We're not going to build a neighborhood out here while this is in the country and there isn't anybody living out here, or there isn't significant population. But if some subdivisions come in down here, then suddenly a neighborhood park might be warranted in this area. And so these will be, to be determined as development occurs and demand and population increases, basically. The community parks, we've included 3 potential locations, but these are going to be really based on a number of factors, including a larger parcel of land. So community park is usually going to be like a 15+ acre parcel of land, or at least a 10-acre parcel of land, but 10 to 15 acres so that you can accommodate some ball fields and other things. And so those are going to be, they're going to end up being on the perimeter of town because that's where land's available. You're going to want the land, it doesn't have to be completely flat, but you're going to want it to be readily developable to achieve some of those gaps and goals that you have currently in the system. And I think, as far as community parks, it's going to depend on land availability. So it could be 3 smaller community parks or 2 larger community parks, depending on what land becomes available. We also made a noted the potential to acquire some natural areas. And so even though we don't yet usually buy natural areas, it's important to note that, through donations and conservation easements and other things, you guys have acquired a lot of natural area over the years, natural area and open space. And it's an important amenity in the city of Sandy and something that people really enjoy, particularly with the trail system going along Tickle Creek. And so we did note just a few sections that potentially could be acquired over the years and should be looked out for as opportunities come up. So I'm going to turn off my pointer. Move on to my next slide. And this is our proposed trail system. And so similarly, there's quite a long list of proposed trails that came to us on this project. And so this map is showing an extensive network in green that would be supplementing the yellow and brown system that was, or the brown lines that were on the original inventory. And what you can also see on this plan is we've also identified the crossings, because as I was talking about the barriers, crossings are important both for access to parks and for trail networks. So we have existing crossings, which are in brown, and that's where there are crossing signals currently coming through town on 26. And then we have a number of proposed crossings, potentially one near Deer Point and Vista, a couple along Highway 211, where, there aren't any crossings currently and something could be needed. Potentially a mid-block crossing near the high school to cross Bluff Road, and potentially an improvement of the Orient. I think this is the Orient crossing right here. So some of these, I would say the trails and the crossings both are an element that could be either included in the Parks and Trails Master Plan or the Transportation System Plan, or split between them. And so that's an element that we're still coordinating with. There's another consultant who's working on a Transportation System Plan update for the city of Sandy right now, and we're coordinating some of these final details with them so that we so that our plans are aligned, and the plan for future transportation and trail connections is kind of aligned across both of our plans. But you can see that with this trail network, you would really start to develop that loop system that people could potentially travel almost all the way through town and on a trail, which would be great. So, and then the last chapter in the main body of the report is what we call the implementation chapter. And this is the, how are we going to get it done? How are we going to pay for it? And what are our priorities? And so again, our priorities are based on things that we identified as a need in all of the prior work, whether that was from public input or staff input, or just from our analysis of the numbers. There are also priorities are gaps in services, whether it's an amenity or a park itself where there's a gap, that's something that we know that we need. Developing safe crossings, developing a looped trail. This is roughly the list of priorities and the order of priorities that we ranked them in the plan. And so, looking at those two prior maps, it's a long list of projects, and they're intended to be executed over a 15-year or longer horizon. So we need to break that into chunks and think about what are our near-term, midterm, and long-term priorities on those project lists. And so for this, what we did is we developed capital project lists that correlate with the two maps I just showed you. So we have proposed park system and proposed trail system. And then in addition to that, we have improvements to existing parks that we've also identified and estimated, so that we have an idea of the cost for all of the improvements that are in our plan. And then we break that into chunks as far as, like I said, the near term, which would be the 5-year. And so this is part one of the tier 1 or near term components that are in the CIP. And so these projects were ranked as the highest priorities based on those priorities that I was just showing you on the prior slide. And so we've got about 9 million in improvements in existing parks, about 9 million in improvements on proposed parks, and then a couple million, 2.5 million. Oops, this is chopping off slightly on the bottom. Sorry about that. About 2.5 million in different trail projects. And a lot of these trails are trails that have been identified previously in the transportation system plan, and they're kind of more immediate trail connection needs. So then we talk about, in this chapter, we talk about what are our current funding sources. And then we also talk a little bit about what our potential funding sources are to help pay these bills to get these projects implemented. So currently, the general fund for the city of Sandy, not a lot of it goes to the park system, and it's pretty much just funding operations and maintenance. There's also system development charges, which are charged with building permits, and they're a one-time fee that's associated with a building permit that will pay for things like a new house's share of sewer, street, water, and parks. And so that's a mechanism that helps. That's where new houses equals population growth, and that's them paying for their share of the park system. There's also a special code in the city of Sandy that requires new development to dedicate land for a park. So if a subdivision comes in for development, they can either dedicate a park, or they can pay into a fund, which would be the fee in lieu. They would pay for the acreage that they would otherwise have to be required of them for the population that they are creating. And then that money can be banked together and used to purchase land elsewhere to buy a park and develop it for the community. And then of course, grants and donations. And grants, there's a section in the appendix that has a list of some of all of the potential grants there are for parks and trails development. There are lots of grants available. but I tried to summarize the most common ones and what they can be used for. Just, I know they're commonly used, but sometimes there are new ones people haven't thought of before. And then donations. And sometimes that's the donation of land. It could be volunteer efforts, trail building, park cleanup in the spring, different things like that. So this is an estimate of what we think is a potential 5-year capital funding window, which would cover the majority of the projects in our CIP list. So the current SDC budget estimate for the is $315,000 per year. We put in a grant estimate of $100,000 per year, which could be one big grant every couple of years or several smaller grants, depending on how it was packaged and what project was put forward. We estimated some donations and volunteer time per year for an estimated revenue of about $465,000, and then over the 5-year period, that'd be about $2.3 million. In addition to that, we have a current SDC balance of about $1.3 million, which can be used to develop one or several, it could be used to develop a new neighborhood park or phase 1 of a couple of neighborhood parks or something else. There also is the potential to use urban renewal funds on the Sandy Community Campus phase 1. And then there's the possibility of pursuing a general obligation bond with the community or another bonding mechanism that could help to pay for some of these near-term needs. And so that's kind of, this is an estimate. All we can do is estimate based on what we know right now. Obviously, if some of these funding sources didn't end up materializing, the amount of work that could be achieved would be less than what we have forecast currently. Another thing to note is that the SDC estimate is based on the current SDC rate that's being charged on building permits. And one of the proposals, one of the appendices in the draft report that you have is an Sdc analysis that was done by another sub-consultant to us, FCS Group. They looked at the current CIP list and the current SDC and put together an estimate of a range of potential SDC costs that could be charged, which would be generally updating the list and increasing the current SDC. So if that were to happen, there would have the potential to have more revenue generation than just $315,000 per year. But we aren't planning on that now because we don't know when that would happen or what rate they would choose. SDC update would need to be, there's a full process for that would be, prepared by somebody like FCS, and then council would need to approve it. This is the sort of a 5-year estimate on potential the land fee. And so the current budget again includes about $165,000 per year on the land, on income on the land fee. And there's also an existing balance of 1.1 million. So we think over the 5-year period, you could get about 2 million that could be used to purchase land, such as a community park. And again, the fee in lieu fee that's being charged also needs to be reviewed and updated. And if it is, then that could increase the revenue from that source. I'll just touch on operations funding really quickly. So this is a comparison of the Parks Operations General Fund budget and the Parks Capital Fund budget, which is the SDCs and fee in lieu. And so you can see, because of the growth that you've experienced in recent years, the capital funding estimate has, income per year has increased significantly, but the general fund for operations and maintenance has not increased at nearly the same rate. More capital funding and more park development really means that, the operations staffing needs to be increased to keep pace with all of the new maintenance that's potentially going to be generated by new park development. And so that is something that we touch on in the report, the need to have some supplemental income to help support operations, and especially if the park system is going to grow at the level that's proposed in the current draft plan that's in front of you. This is just another way of looking at that number of parks maintained or sites maintained versus the staffing over the last 20 years. And then there are the appendices, and I will just summarize a few key points about this, and then I will wrap it up and we can start discussion. So there are a bunch of appendices. In fact, I think the appendix in its entirety is larger than the report itself, but that's not a bad thing. You have that info if you need it, but you don't have to read it all. They are not in order based on the order of the report. They're kind of in order based on what I thought was important to you. So we have the capital project list, which is the full project lists for everything that's proposed in the plan, the existing park inventories, design guidelines to help guide development of new parks, park concepts for the 3 neighborhood parks that are currently undeveloped, and for the community campus, which is sort of undeveloped, a list of potential grants, and then the preliminary SDC analysis and a summary of the public outreach activities that were done to date. Those 2 at the back are the biggest. So this is a table that's part of the design guidelines. And so what we did for this is we provided some guidance on what is good to see in a park. And so this is both to help city staff with planning, and also particularly for the land dedications and park developments that happen associated with subdivisions. This provides some guidance on what is standardly included in a mini park versus a neighborhood park, and what can be expected of a contractor if they were to take on construction of it themselves. And so you can see some of these things that talks about playground size. And so the size of the playground is sort of scaled to the size of the park and the busyness of the park. So a small park, like a mini park, would have a smaller playground than a large community park. The size of the lawn is scaled to the size of the park, no lawn or open field for play. The number of site amenities is scaled. And you have a few amenities that are standard, and then a number of things that are optional, but not necessarily standard in a mini park. And then that list of options just increases as the type of park changes. Another thing that we provided, the version that's in your final draft actually has slightly updated figures, but we included trail standards for 4 classifications of trails. And so the trail CIP in the appendix includes the classification recommendation for each of those trail segments. And so there are differences in the trails. While they look like lines on the map, there are big, wide paved trails, narrow natural area trails, and a couple of options in between. And so we wanted to provide, similar to providing a diverse park selection, we wanted to provide a diverse trail selection because different users have different needs and wants. And then here are the community or the neighborhood park concepts that we developed for the 3 undeveloped parks. And so this is Champion Way, which is on the west side of town, kind of near the movie theater. You can see the movie theaters up here in the corner. And so this was a preliminary concept that we developed that shows an entry on Chula Vista on the west side of the park with a kind of a trail that's coming up the hill because it's kind of a steep slope. And you have a looped trail system. You also have 2 other connection points, but because this park is kind of in between 2 streets with a grade change in between it. So from the Champion Way side, we didn't think we would be able to get a trail in without having some stairs. And then we have a picnic shelter, a playground, a couple of locations for some ADA picnic tables, and then also potential future trail connection down to Tickle Creek. Deer Point is on the east side of town, and this one is showing, so currently the city of Sandy owns this long, narrow, rectangular parcel, but there is the potential to acquire an additional adjacent parcel. And so this concept is showing the potential if both of those parcels were acquired. So this second half is included in the plan as neighborhood park 7, I believe it is, which is Deer Point expansion. So that would be adding on to the current Deer Point. And so again, because it's a neighborhood park, it includes a lot of the same standard amenities as Champion. It includes a playground, a picnic shelter, a large open field. This one, because it's a little bit larger, Champion's relatively small. Deer Point, particularly with the expansion, would be large enough to potentially accommodate a couple of picnic shelters and a couple of locations for picnic tables. And we thought that was important because we noted that there was a deficiency in picnic tables when we looked at our specific amenities. And we also included a half court, which could be basketball or it could be multi-striped for different uses. And then this is the Ponderlane concept, which has been updated since the last plan or last presentation I gave you. And so this one is over off of Highway 211. And it again includes some similar and some different amenities. So it again has a playground, a looped trail, a shelter, and a couple of picnic table locations. But then in addition to those items, we've included a potential off-leash dog park because one of the things that was noted is improving the geographic distribution of some of these amenities that are high demand. So that would be dog park on the south side of town and maybe a splash pad on the north side of town, so that people are not traveling across town as much to get to these sort of special use facility or specialty facilities. And so this is also showing, you know, sidewalk along the street and street improvements with connection up to the existing neighborhood to the north. And because we are not anticipating there to be accessible, you know, access to on-street parking along Gunderson, and we don't want to impact the neighborhood, we've included a small parking lot. This is not by any means going to serve a lot of people, but it's about 5 parking spaces so that there's a little bit of place for people who are driving to get to this park. There's a place. Parking is not always included in a neighborhood park, but because this park doesn't have great walking access and it doesn't have on-street parking, we did include a few spaces. And then the last undeveloped site is the Sandy Community Campus. And so these concepts were developed under a prior planning effort. So they're not my concepts, but they are showing some potential scenarios that could be developed at the Sandy Community Campus. So this work was done when the Aquatic Center feasibility study was completed a couple of years ago. And we took these, all of these concepts were included in the open house that we conducted in the fall online. And we got comments on things people liked and didn't like about all 3 of these. I will say that for these 3 concepts, for the most part, the input was pretty positive. We did get a few comments on this one about things that people would like to see changed. And in the last meeting, we also talked about things that we would like, you know, people would like to see changed. So I think this is a first pass, but really it would be likely that what was developed in phase 1 of the Sandy Community Campus could potentially be, it'll be revisited before it moves forward with construction. This is showing a very large parking lot, far larger than is needed for the part of the park that they're developing. It includes a community garden, a picnic area, a playground, a multi-use court that's interesting because it's round, and then a skate spot. So the existing skate park, I believe, is intended to be demolished in this scenario and replaced and relocated. And then this was the concept that was developed. This is like the full build out concept. Again, some of the elements of this are more or less likely to move forward. For example, this includes a really extensive amphitheater and stage, which probably isn't really something that's a high priority because you already have 3 amphitheater stage facilities in your park system, and that's a lot for a community of your size. So I'm not sure you need another one. This is taking advantage of the hill, I think, which is a cool idea. But anyways, so that is the gist of my presentation. Next step, so I'm visiting you guys again tonight, and then in June, we're going to a joint planning commission and city council work session. And then after that, we'll have individual meetings with planning commission and then eventually with city council to push this plan forward through to adoption. So the final draft, which was sent out to you last week, is the current plan that we'll be taking to the next meeting. But now we're open for questions, discussion, or whatever.
Anybody have any questions for Tracy? Does anybody have any comments for Tracy?
I will say something about comments. Oh, Rachel, I see you just unmuted yourself, so I'll just say something real quick and then you can go. So I did get a few comments that came in from board members since the last presentation, and they were all good and insightful comments. Some of them were just things that maybe need a little bit more clarification. And I do expect that there'll be an opportunity to include those revisions as we move forward. So, you know, we're calling this the final draft. Any future drafts that once this goes out and it's public draft, then we'll be tracking the changes so that people can see what was changed. And it might be a line here or a line there throughout the report. Okay, I'm sorry, Rachel, did you have a question or a comment?
I was just going to comment that I feel like the presentation was very similar to what was said in April. So if people aren't commenting, it might be because they're just recalling, like, oh yeah, this is familiar.
That's great. I never know if it's going to be the same or different. And what we did is we did 2 parts in like the deeper dive, and then we wanted to do the overview just so that we talked about all of it one more time. So I hope it wasn't too duplicative.
So I guess if none of you has any comments, I had a couple, and some of them are minor, but just kind of wanted to bring it up with the board too. I believe it was mentioned somewhere early in the plan about the fact we don't have a volunteer coordinator for the Parks and Trails Committee, if I remember correctly. And there is a small budget amount in the capital plan for volunteer work, but is there, I'm thinking out loud, so I apologize, but is there a way we could leverage a position, or get some traction on something? How worthwhile would that be, and would it help us? I doubt it would significantly knock the budget number down, but it would be a good way to get the community involved, to have a volunteer coordinator, at least talk about the position at the board level, and talk about that as a possible enhancement to the whole park system.
I think, well, I'd like to jump in on that one a little bit. I get where you're coming from. I think that typically park master plans, park and trail master plans don't really delve into the staffing levels associated with the department, or the specific staffing levels associated with the department. I think in the perfect world, if you will, that'd be the responsibility of, the Parks and Rec director or the community services director would be responsible for the implementation of the plan. And part of that is to say, okay, where's our deficiencies in staffing? What do we need to add to that? And that's where the recommendation of the volunteer coordinator or additional maintenance people or a number of other things would be incorporated into things. Generally, though, my experience has been that the master plans are just dealing with the structural part of the department, not necessarily the labor end of the department. Tracy, do you have any comments about that?
I thought it was a good comment. It's one of those things that we did talk about, and sometimes you don't realize that it didn't track all the way through. So while we don't usually go into the depth of detail, like about staffing, we did make a few recommendations, and it's easy enough to add a recommendation to explore the potential for a volunteer coordinator in the future or something like that. And then, all of these ultimately, it depends on funding and staffing to make them happen. And, there are some communities that have really successful volunteer coordinator positions. Most of them are a little bit larger. It's a hard job, I'll just say. But, I know Kathleen and Nancy, who, helped with a lot of the implementation over the years, I think, associated with the prior plan. Nancy obviously led the charge on that. And I think, they've done a lot of work through volunteers and for a lot less money than what it costs to do it in the real world if you have to hire a contractor. So it's always, it like helps build community, feeling or sense of community and in community engagement. And it also could save you a little money, maybe. So.
Sarah, I thought I saw your finger go up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for the board members. So what Tracy was referring to with terms of questions, for those I was able to reach on the phone and talk to ahead of time, I forwarded all that information to Tracy and Dawn. But this is a good time to weigh in if you have strong feelings about things. This is a good time to have those conversations.
So, I've kind of beat this to a dead horse, but my agenda is still the sporting complexes. And I know what Sarah was talking about is how when the pitch went out, it wasn't very popular, but it obviously didn't hit the proper community or have we had it in the town. So, a lot of people don't even realize what they're missing out on. So, I'm still going to be pushing really hard to get a baseball field either at the community center park or somewhere right here in the middle of town, because I mean, I feel that the city wants it. We need it. I mean, I'm literally down here at the Kelso Elementary School, and we had four different fields going right now, and half the town is here. You know, I mean, so even if we put one field in the middle of town and have a game once a week, I mean, I guarantee we'll have people there. I'm been running the concession stand this entire time where I've been listening to you guys talk and watching the maps and stuff like that. And people are coming up, they're getting hot dogs, they're getting their pretzels, they're getting their nachos. You know, we do that in the middle of town, and we're going to have a show up. I mean, it's not impossible to have it.
David, I'm a little curious. When you're talking about ball fields, what size of ball field are you talking about?
So we could do easily with the Sandy Community Center Park that we were thinking. We were doing 70-foot bases, which would house major. It would house a 60-foot base and a 70-foot base, which would be majors and down from there. So boys 12 and under is who would be able to play on those fields per league rules.
And what is the outfield fence requirement on that?
Let me look it up really quick. You caught me on that one.
I probably have it relatively available.
I was guessing somewhere around, 200 or so.
I was going to say, I think it's around 190, but it does vary depending
Yeah.
on which.
I was going to speculate 200, but it's been a while since I've looked that up too.
Yeah, I just always have to go back and look because there's too
So
many.
is a baseball field the same as the softball field? Like I hear, the boys could play this, but if girls wanted to play the softball, would they have that opportunity as well? I mean, is it the same field?
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest difference between a softball field and a baseball field is the dirt versus grass. So the diamond is usually out of grass with dirt fun bases, and a softball field, it's primarily all dirt. If I'm not mistaken on that, you'd have to ask Sarah. I know she's really big into softball.
Typically, you are correct. Typically for softball, it is a full skinned infield. On baseball, I've seen them go both ways. They can be played on skinned, or they can be played on grass infields also.
So theoretically, you could have a field for both. The same.
You could. One of the other questions that always comes up is, well, what about the mound? The girls don't use a mound. The boys typically use a mound for pitching. Some places use a portable mound where they can bring them out.
And that's what I was going to say is we could always put a portable mound out there. That way it could be used as a universal staging area where, they don't have to use the mound.
Right. And then the other difference is bases. That's a pretty easy issue to deal with. You can, set the bases at 3 different lengths if you want to. For girls, I believe is a 60-foot base path. And I think David just said 70 to 80 foot for that age group of boys. And you can make those adjustable too. So that's not particularly difficult. I was just kind of curious as to what the overall space requirement is, because it's, if it's 200 feet from home plate to the outfield fence, then you have another 15 to 20 feet to the backstop from home plate. And then you probably have another 20 or 30 feet minimum for spectator area.
Center field fence is 175 feet.
175, okay.
I think it really just depends on which field you're building. The one I'm looking at right now is Mustang League is 175, which is a 60-foot baseline. But a 60-foot Little League is a 200-foot baseline. And a 70-foot Bronco is a 200-foot baseline. So it just varies a little bit.
Really, a lot of it depends on how easy the kids are going to hit a home run.
You'll be giving away a lot of snow cones in that case, right?
Exactly. I mean that's how I look at it. Because like one game that just ended here, it's got 60-foot baselines and the outfield is rather small. But that's where we put our minors division, and it gives them a chance to actually hit it over the fence and get those home runs, which really boosts the egos and gets them wanting to hit even harder. Okay. And then that way, by the time they get to the majors, they're ready to hit on that larger field. And I don't know. Like I said, I mean, if you guys could see what I was seeing right now with all the people that are
And
leaving,
David,
the people that came
going-
to the concession stands, I mean, it's remarkable.
right, and David, going back to your point of where you were suggesting fields, I kind of missed what you said. I had a little glitch in my internet. What were you saying about you were suggesting field someplace?
Well, we were looking at the field there at, by the skate park, right down the corner where the backstop's already built, and there's a rusted old soccer goalpost that really needs to come down. We had already done the measurements. We could easily have put a majors field there with, you know, a decent backstop and a decent outfield, and made it so we could add a you know, a good 2 years worth of, you know, at least 2 years, maybe longer, of play out there.
And then you were suggesting another place?
Anywhere, any open field that the Parks Committee can, you know, get their hands on and put baseball together. I mean, I've played in leagues where we've literally played right in the middle of a neighborhood in a church parking lot.
I have a question about fencing, and this is ignorant. I'm just thinking multi-use. Besides the backstop, are the rest of the fencing required for the leagues?
It's not so much required, but like here at the school, we use temporary fencing. So at the end of the season, all the fencing comes down, and the field's opened up for baseball.
So could it be used for
football?
Other sports in the fall?
Absolutely, it could. I mean,
Yes.
fencing is fencing.
Yes.
And it's set up that way. It's set up that way at the high school as well as at the Hoodview complex. Those are multi-use fields that can be converted for soccer and football in the fall. And they can also be adjusted for adult softball, for youth softball, baseball. They have a lot of flexibility.
One of the things that I want to, you know, take a look at, I know that the site plan for the main part, sorry, I'm having a little brain freeze for some reason here. The one at the old junior high school site. I know that one is being discussed a little bit at amongst a couple of counselors. I know that there's a concern about, you know, the proposed amphitheater. I know that there is some concerns about how all the sites, all the amenities fit together. I know that there was I believe there was a rather extensive public input process that already occurred on that. And I believe there's a strong desire to honor that as far as the long-term development of that site. But I also realize that you know, that there is a desire to kind of slide those tiles around a little bit. And whether that results in more space or less space, I'm not sure. I would think more if we're not doing the amphitheater. I was planning on reaching out to the city council to have a little discussion with them and then ask them and invite them to invite us into that process for some of that discussion moving forward so that we can be a little bit more involved in that develops. I think that's a good opportunity for us to kind of express some needs and desires that maybe we have or don't have, you know, in relation to that area. I think my impression, though, again, is that they do want to stay as true as possible to the vision of what that plan was developed as. Doesn't mean that things can't shift a little bit, but I think that that's where they're coming from, at least at this point, anyway. So I will make that commitment to reach out to those folks and have a chat with them. Yes, Sarah.
But that's the thing. The plan was visioned on very few, not the entire city or all 11,000 and so many of us. I mean, it just doesn't seem fair that a plan was developed on something that very few had a say on.
Well, I can tell you that I did not have a say on it either because I wasn't living in town at the time, and so I do have some questions about. You know,
so I mean, unless that plan was, you know, committed 12 years ago, I was living in it and I didn't see anything come up on voting what got put in there.
Well, I don't think, and typically it's not something that goes to a vote of the people, so to speak. It's more of a process where people come in and provide input, and then based on that, the concept plans are developed, they're refined, they're shown to the public. People, you know, provide feedback, and some point the city council makes a decision on what goes into that park space. But, you know, again, I wasn't here during that process. That's one of the questions I have, though, is, you know, how that process ran and what was involved in that process. Sarah, you had your hand up for a second. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to, reassure the board that, there'll be an opportunity to participate in those discussions for sure. And also just, to David's point, there are other opportunities we can look at in the future for possible sports complexes. There's money in fee and lieu. Had a conversation earlier today with Kathleen about the possibility that, we might want to bank some land for the future. So it's not just one opportunity at the current community campus to look at those needs. It's one site. It's not all the sites that might be available to us at some point. And the board will have an opportunity, I think, to be involved as that gets looked at again at the community campus.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I think it's important to realize that we noted throughout the plan that there's a deficiency in community parks. There's a deficiency in ball fields. So that is covered well, I think, in the plan. We've identified 3 potential regions within the city that you could look to acquire land. And I think, of course, it depends on land availability, but something on the outskirts, like that's a larger, flatter, possibly formerly rural tract, might have a better suitability for more than one field squeezed in. Like the Sandy Community Campus would be a tight squeeze with one large baseball field, and it would push most of everything else that's in that concept plan out of there. So I think it's a great short-term use, but I'm not sure that it's the best long-term use of that particular site because it's constrained by forest and slope and buildings and things like that. And so that doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but it just means that it really pushes a lot of other things out of that site. So, but it really depends ultimately on what the community, intentions are for that site and, and what's achievable and what you guys have money to do. I do think that, the fact that you have a balance in the fee and lieu fund right now, that's a pot of money. You're getting land dedicated from developers for neighborhood parks, but that money that you've banked is a great place to look at either using what you have or adding to it with a grant or something to acquire a larger parcel that could really meet some bigger active recreation needs. And I would suggest that you don't need one field, you need several fields. And so a big piece of land where you could get baseball and softball and soccer, or overlapping a couple baseball and a couple soccer, that would be a better.
Soccer, absolutely. Soccer, baseball, softball. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. I think that's really, I think that would be a really desirable outcome for you guys.
I totally agree with that concept. If we're going to make the investment, we should make the investment to serve more of the whole community for those sports than just saying, okay, well, we can, spend a lot of money on one little field, or we can build several fields to accommodate the different age groups and the different sports, so softball, soccer, and baseball, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Any other
The
comments?
parents might not have to run around to all these different parks too, like one field at one, like one game at one park or something like that. No, seriously, if you had the scene and everything, it would be really, I think, beneficial for families to come together and not have to split apart to watch everyone's games.
Absolutely. I know when my kids were young, growing up, we spent a lot of time driving from one field through the McDonald's drive into the next field. And wasn't always the most efficient use of time and resources in that regard. Any other comments or questions?
In general?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a question on John Surratt, how that would physically get larger when it's bordered by the bluff and by the road itself.
It's not intended that it would get larger. I think the comment was if it were to be, so some of the paths I think are questionable from an ADA perspective, and the parking lot, I think it would be more of a reorganization, trying to reorganize it so that it was maybe used the space better and met more diverse needs. There is also a proposal to develop a trail down the bluff, which Nancy assures me has been walked and bushwhacked by people. But like developing a trail from that down to Sandy River Park and down to the river. And so
Yeah, that made total sense. I saw that one, but I didn't realize that it was just reconfiguring. So that makes more sense too. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So what other comments or concerns or questions that anybody else has? Mary, I haven't heard any comments from you tonight. Do you have anything you'd like to share?
Really the only thing I have, and I don't know exactly what the numbers are for need of it, but there are a lot of children I know that are autistic here in the city, and they require, some of them, depending on the level that they're on the spectrum, the play areas, they have to be made so that they can use them. And like, is that going to be in consideration at all?
Are you talking like about sensory gardens, Mary?
Well, sensory gardens, using the swings.
Mm-hmm.
Some children who are autistic will not use the swings because they're scared of them. Going down a slide, they see this little chute, and they get scared of that too. Or, it's just, have we thought about, or have you thought about making the parks available for them? Because I do know that some people go to other cities to use their parks because we don't have them.
So that was actually one of the stakeholder groups that we talked to, talked about special needs and playground. And we did include a recommendation for a sensory garden and for universal play. Those don't completely capture what you're talking about.
Did you just do that with your chair?
But they, little background noise there. That was distracting, sorry.
Sorry, I just put a big old scratch on the side of my truck with my chair.
Oh.
Anyway, so I think what you're talking about is definitely something that, like, when you get into the design and the development of the parks, those are things that will really be more strongly considered at that point. But kind of similar to the conversation we had last time about accessibility, when we go into real design of a park, we really look at what do we need. What are the considerations we want to make? Fencing is another thing, like not like hemming them in fencing, but just something that provides a little barrier that prevents somebody from taking off. And so, like running, like that fight and flight concern. And so there are a lot of things that can be considered in the playground development. And I would consider them all to be kind of, standard practice and things that, like, the existing playgrounds in town, were built at different times and the standards change over time. But, today's standard, anything new coming in is going to really need to be developed to be minimum meeting Americans with Disabilities Act, hopefully meeting, more universal design, which is, a higher threshold than just ADA requirements. And so, and then really thinking about, a lot of things like nature play and sensory gardens. Those are interesting for a broad, they help serve some kids that have some different needs, but they also are very entertaining for a lot of kids. And so those are just great practices to incorporate into the system.
Okay.
Right, they're inclusive. They include everyone.
Exactly.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my desires tonight, one of my hopes tonight was that we would be able to come up with a recommendation, make a motion on a recommendation. The schedule after tonight, it goes to a joint session between the planning commission and the city council. After that, I believe it just goes up for adoption. Is that correct, Tracy?
Yes, I believe it might have two, I'm not sure. It has either 1 or 2 trips to planning commission after the work session and then the same for council. And I did send an email to Jordan to clarify what the process was to get to the end, but he hasn't responded yet, so.
One of my hopes is that we would be able to put together a motion that would be a recommendation regarding the plan. I believe that Sarah had put together some draft language within the staff report for potential recommendations, but basically as I recall, I don't have them in front of me. I seem to have lost that screen. It was basically a motion to recommend approval of the draft master plan, or a motion recommending approval with certain modifications or certain emphasis within the master plan. So for instance, that motion may include something like I would move to approve the master plan with additional emphasis put on siting of baseball, softball fields in an area that at the earliest possible opportunity, or a priority for baseball and softball fields, or for, you know, any other, you know, amenity that we may want. I think that what we want to do is, what I'm hoping we will do is kind of provide that direction on to the city council and the planning commissions as they're deliberating it. I want them to know what our thinking is, as opposed to having them make suppositions as to what we may be thinking out there. So we need to kind of tell them where we're at with this in a motion. Did I capture that, Sarah? Okay, that was 2 thumbs up, I guess. Sarah's on mute. Does anybody have a motion that they would like to make? I see Mary.
I make a motion that we accept the plan and add into it the fields. Those fields I feel are very important for our children.
Okay. And when you say those fields, I assume you're talking about baseball, softball fields.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And soccer or whatever.
And
Yeah.
soccer fields. Okay.
Multi-use.
Multi-use. Okay. And Will?
Yeah, I mean, same comment, except I would switch baseball with multi-use.
And Mary, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so there is a motion to recommend approval of the plan with an emphasis on additional multi-use sports fields. Is there a second to that motion? Rachel or Will?
Second, sorry, I
Okay.
had to load a car really quick. I
No problem.
second
I
the
saw a cat
motion.
running across your screen for a second there. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding that? Seeing no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I,
David, did you want to vote or did you vote?
Aye.
Aye, okay. I believe that's everybody. Motion is unanimous. Thank you very much. Shall we move on to our next
What is
topic?
it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. We need the soap. There should be the hand soap in there too. Sorry.
Perfect. Okay, let's move on to our next topic, which is Cedar.
Tracy, thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah, Tracy,
Tracy.
thank you very much.
bye, thank you, Tracy.
Can't tell you how much we appreciate all your work on this. I'm going to try and sit in on June 7th, I believe.
Okay, sounds good. We'll see you then. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
You bet. Have a nice evening. Sarah, you want to take us into the Cedar Creek subdivision?
Yes, so this is this board's first opportunity to look at a proposed development. I sent out a staff report with some background. This particular site had an earlier proposal as a planned unit development that was denied by council. So the developer has come back with a proposal a new proposal that fits in with the zoned density. And this is your opportunity to take a look at that site. And I have some visuals for you and to make a recommendation that I can forward to planning about what you'd like to see with regard to the parks piece. And the developer has proposed a fee in lieu of land dedication. And the previous time that the board looked at this, they agreed with that particular site to a fee in lieu, but you are not bound by that. But as a piece of background, that was what the previous board had approved of, recommended, I should say. And the other piece is I wanted to recommend that you had a discussion about its proximity to proposed future trails and whether you wanted to look at the development with regard to its proximity to those proposed trails. And I can bring a few things up.
Please do.
Okay, let's see here. I'm going to share my screen and I wanted to bring one thing up first. Okay, I'm going to bring this one up first. So this is an aerial view of the proposed site. This is, I believe, Johnson RV right here, and this is all. Can you see my little hand? Can you see my screen?
We can't see. We can't see your screen share
You
there.
can't. Don't know why. Well, okay, let me try again. Oh, there we go. Can you see it now?
Not quite yet. Oh, here we go.
Okay, so this is an aerial view of the proposed development. And I believe this is right where Johnson RV is on the east end of town. This is Highway 26. This is Vista Loop right here. So you can kind of see that the property has two phases to it. And then I'm going to share another. This is a picture of the proposed details of the development. But I want to show you this too. So this is what I did was I took from the master plan draft a screenshot of proposed trails that are in this area. So T21, T22 primarily. And then although these little green triangles are not exact, that's roughly where this development is proposed. So you can see we have a hope for this trail connection in this area.
We're not seeing that view.
Oh, you still can't? Okay, let me try that again.
We see the plat, but we don't see the trail.
Okay, all right. I'll figure this out. Hold on. Okay, do you see that new one?
Got it.
Okay, so this is a picture of, like I was saying, the yellow and green dotted line here is the proposed trail expansion and one of the ways we might connect a trail around the community. These green triangles are roughly in the vicinity of the proposed development. It's not exact, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a visual so you could see how it is in relation to proposed trails. The previous time the board looked at this, they did also recommend that a trail easement be a condition of approval. Again, you are not bound by that, but I wanted you to know that as background. And this is probably your one and only opportunity to weigh in on this development. And it came up kind of quickly, so I put together what I could, and I hope this is helpful. I will show you one other, if I can find it now. Give me a second here. I don't exactly know.
So for
Start-
those of you on the committee, if you're not familiar with the terminology of a planned unit development, basically what the developer is asking is to make this development, and as a part of that, they have to designate certain areas as resource areas or natural areas or open space areas.
Hey, Dawn,
Typically, yes.
I just want to let you know that's not being proposed as a planned unit development this time.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
No, this is straight up within its zoning, regular zoning allowance.
Okay.
That makes
good to know.
sense.
Okay, so basically the developer is requesting to pay the fee in lieu as opposed to setting aside open space.
Well, no, they still have allocated open space, but they're proposing that remain private
Okay,
and under the management of the developer.
so
And-
homeowners association will be responsible.
You
for
know, it didn't have details, I don't think, about the homeowners association. And my apologies, the planner of record couldn't be here tonight and she would know more of these details. I can dive into it here in a second and try and look again. It's all on the city's website. But the open space, they want to designate that. They're proposing to designate that as private. And they are proposing a fee in lieu of land dedication. And so I wanted to be sure and share with you what the previous board had looked at with regard to this site.
What are the blue triangles?
Let's see. Those, one is, I think, a retention pond.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are retention ponds, I think.
Yeah. Right, stormwater treatment. Now that's
Yeah.
a slope property out there too, isn't it?
Sorry, it's what?
On a slope, the hillside.
I think out,
green that-
out this way, yes. Kind
okay,
of,
yeah.
yeah.
Is that all
It's-
part of the same? That open space, where it's labeled open space, that's what they want to maintain as private open space, correct?
I believe so.
I'm comfortable with standing with what our original recommendation was. With the emphasis being, we want a corridor, pedestrian access easement corridor to allow for development of trail access to continue the loop trail around the city, the T21, T22 loop that has been identified in our master plan. I am personally fine accepting the fee in lieu. I think that money can be well spent on future ball fields, for instance.
Can I comment, Don?
Yes.
My only comment is there's nothing north of 26 from the Sandy Community Center over. There's not a single park, right? Am I correct in saying that?
You are correct.
And Vista Loop already has challenges crossing 26 to get over to the proposed park. I can't remember the name of it. So-
Deerfield.
And I don't know
Good
what private land rights mean, but it sounds pretty restrictive to me. That's my comment.
Okay. Any other comments? Rachel.
Yeah, I don't understand. Okay, run me through this again. Like, I don't understand, like the developer at first, that land or the space that was set aside for like parks or whatever, that was going to be public, or they had to give us money for that. What was that all about? And then all of a sudden they're taking that land back?
No,
No,
no, this is privately owned property, and there
Okay.
is a proposed development. The
Mhm.
developer, this is his second proposal, okay? And the property, belongs to the developer. And as a board, you have the option of saying, yeah, we agree, a fee in lieu is what we would recommend for this particular development, or we would rather see land dedication. You can address the trail, the proposed trail along this area and make a recommendation with regard to that as well. Dawn, I don't know if you want to rephrase what you were proposing.
Well, what I want to do is make sure that we have a corridor that we can run the community trail through that's open to the public.
Okay. But then as Will's saying, like, how did this all connect? Where did I get the disconnect there? Like, why?
It's kind of an isolated piece of property out there. You know, you're bordered by the highway, you're bordered on the back by some rather extensive slopes. And then you have a commercial piece right in the middle of it, the Johnson RV part or RV sales there. There is no public open space out there. There are some rather significantly large lots out in that area. I did drive out through that area, and it's very difficult to see from the road exactly where all these pieces are. There are, as you move back more towards the city itself, some rather significantly large lots with homes on them, single family residents with homes on them that are out there. These are, Sarah, do you recall what size these lots are?
You know, give me a second. I'll go to the website. It does say on the city's website, so give me just a second. And I can tell you, they vary. They're larger lots than what was in the original proposal.
Hey, can I say something? This is
Yes,
Kathleen.
absolutely.
Hey, I was just looking at the parks map, and just because of Will's question, and NP8, there is a park proposed out there in the new plan, and it's NP8. And so if you have a copy of the master plan, let's see, I don't know what page. I just have the map saved separately, but and this is dated in March 2021. But there is a park identified out there. So yeah, just to answer Will's question, and because I knew there was a park proposed besides the community campus over on the north side of town.
Is that
Just no current
Kathleen?
park. Will, were you referring to what we have currently or what's in the proposed plan?
Current.
And okay, yeah, there is nothing currently out there. Kathleen, on the proposed plan, was that a neighborhood park or a community park?
Stand by.
I think it's a neighborhood park.
Yes, it is. And hold on, I'm going to look at one other thing about.
It's called Vista Loop 2 is the name of it. Hey, Sarah, what Kathleen's looking at that. What do the blue lines represent? They look like a lot of house lots and streets going through Johnson RV.
Are you looking at what's on the screen currently? I'm trying to find the lot sizes and I'm not coming. Let me come back to that.
It looks like future expand. I'm just.
Yeah, I think that's just future road platting potential.
Poor Johnson RV.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's intended to put them out of business. I think it's intended if they were to sell their property at some point in time.
I'm just joking. Yeah.
I'm going to share this other one again real quick. Hold on.
Makoto, good to see you.
So this is the proposed, again, the proposed trail system. These green triangles are roughly in the vicinity of the proposed development. I couldn't quickly find the lot size, Dawn, but they are larger lots.
Okay,
And there's a spectrum from, and I'm going from memory here, so I don't want to misquote this, but I think the smaller lots are around 7,500 and then up to maybe 15,000, but I read it at some point because I knew Shelley couldn't be here, so it was.
And just as a little history background, there is in the 1997 existing master parks and trail plan, a park, only it was on the other side of Vista Loop on the north side, and it was further west than what's the development that's proposed here. And then this plan actually moves that park location into the little land island that Vista Loop Road makes. And it's just kind of, again, those are conceptual locations and, you know, not intended to say, well, exactly the point underneath that land has to be a park. They're conceptual.
Right.
But it is in the general area of the parcel that's within the area that's, you know, in between 26 and Vista Loop. So I'll shut up and get off.
no, you're fine.
No, that's
you're
okay.
fine.
It's helpful.
One
Thank
of
you.
the things we could do. Yeah. One of the things that's kind of hard is trying to hold a developer accountable to a proposed plan as opposed to an existing plan. With that said, I'm willing to give it a try. I'm scrolling through the proposed plan right now, looking for the neighborhood parks, or the neighborhood park size standard, I believe was 2 acres, give or take, minimum on a neighborhood park, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, everybody. I was doing some last minute shopping. I'm getting married this weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Yeah, so the minimum size on a neighborhood park, the general size, I should say, on a neighborhood park is a range between 2 and 5 acres. So at 10,000 square feet, you're looking at, if we were to estimate that their average lot size is 10,000 square feet, that's like 4.5 lots per acre. So you're looking at having the developer drop 9 lots to accommodate a minimum size park, which would be somewhere around the vicinity, I would guess, of slightly smaller than Bornstedt Park. So if the mind of the committee is to recommend that they set aside land for that size of a park, that's fine. We can do that. That does not mean that we will necessarily achieve that. It would just be a recommendation. Ultimately, council is the one that will make that decision. What's for dinner?
You want to do that? What would be like, to me, that's kind of for some reason, maybe because I just don't have enough information or knowledge about this, that would be of course, we'll ask.
Well, what the developer is proposing is suggesting that rather than give us the land, he's going to give us an equivalent sum of money for the land. Now, the sum of money he's giving us would be based on a formula, and I don't recall off the top of my head. It's kind of a complicated formula, but it basically comes down to the value of the property times, the value of each lot times 0.0043 times the number of lots that are out there becomes the amount of money that they're required to give us. So it becomes a rather sizable chunk of change that we can use to either buy or build additional park spaces with.
And that
Like our
can,
sports center for baseball and softball and soccer.
yeah,
It didn't have to be even, it just needs to be 120, so you could have done 20 extra ones.
No, there wasn't enough ones for
Oh,
that.
Do we have the
where'd the
park
bag go?
overlay in the vicinity over there on that side of the highway?
What was that, Makoto?
Do we have a parks overlay available where that has the vicinity of this and size of the park, you know, to make sure that everything was a quarter mile away?
Right now, we don't have anything over in that area. The closest that we have is the Deer Point, which is right next to, or just down the road from it, but it's on the other side of 26, so it's like impossible to get across there. So that is a park desert, so to speak.
so he
And it
wants to
sounds
give
like for
us,
good reason, right? Because
Yeah.
of access and highways and so many other things.
so what I'm hearing is he wants to give us the money in lieu of the land,
Yes.
and we can use that with whatever we want. And then we still want to be able to put a public trailway there.
Yes.
Why couldn't that go off of his property, or does he own all of that property?
He owns a significant chunk of the property. If we could go back to the, if you take a look at you can see where is up now. It shows where the trail would go. Sarah, could you put up the plat again?
Yeah, yeah, give me a second.
Does this new plan basically follow the same, the border of the development?
You want this one, Don?
No, the actual plat that shows the
Okay, stand by.
lots. Okay, Makoto, what was your question?
Is it still pretty much like the same amount of land they're using, and they're basically giving or donating the hilly, unbuildable part?
They're going to retain ownership of the unusable part.
And is that what we're asking a trail through then? Like
That's where that's where I would suggest that we take a look at putting the trail along the. So if you take a look, can you enlarge that a little bit, Sarah?
I think so. Gotta get it in the right.
Right. Okay, now scroll it down a little bit so we can see. Okay, so you see where that on the bigger chunk of the property. I can't quite read the tax lot numbers in there. Sorry. There is a kind of a U shape in the tax lots that are shown there.
Right.
And there's two cul-de-sacs, and the U shape comes down. That would retain, the builder would retain that as open space. It just wouldn't be a public open space. And it's really not very developable. It's hillside. So what we would basically be asking for is a trail corridor that would skirt the edge of that hill and be able to create access. It wouldn't be able to,
Okay.
you know, create a lot of access, but it would still create public access through that property.
That I could go for.
One of the goals that we have, you know, we've obviously established a lot of proposed trails throughout the city. One of them is basically it kind of encircles the overall city, the perimeter of the city.
Right.
This would be a
Okay.
key piece to that trail. This would be one of the harder ones to get. That's why I'm kind of hung up on wanting to make sure that we get that trail access through there, at least the easement through there.
So one of the things that kind of comes into play is that, like Don alluded to, you know, this new Parks and Trails Master Plan hasn't been adopted yet. So technically, they're still under the old rules, the old plan. And the fee in lieu of for currently was set in 2011. So you can imagine the amount of money that they're paying is, you know, per acre for parkland is, you know, based on land values back in 2011. So of course they would be really willing to go ahead and pay the fee in lieu of, because it's much less than actually giving land that's now much more valuable. So those are some of the kind of dynamics that come around. But then, like he said, this is the opportunity to acquire that trail. And Don, you're going to have to kind of probably fill in the blank as to how that works. But, when there's a park in the area, normally historically, if there was a park in the area to be developed, we required them to donate the land and not do fee in lieu of. In this situation, there's kind of a park in the proposed area, but then this trail, can you do the land that the trail? Can you do the land that's part of the trail? Ask for that to be donated as part of a fee in lieu of situation versus actual parkland.
Well, ultimately, it's going to be part of your decision, Kathleen, as a city council. But my recommendation would be to ask, because they're going to retain ownership of that natural area, what we would be asking for is a pedestrian access easement to go through that natural area. So that we could, we would want you guys to specify that, that access easement needs to be 100 feet wide. We wouldn't own that access easement, but it would be publicly accessible. So it restricts theoretically where the public could go, but it creates that easement that we could build a trail on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, part of me is just like, there's the fee in lieu of for parkland versus trail land, and so that's the part that I was a little confused of, is how that trail credit works versus parkland credit works.
I would disconnect that and say we want the fee in lieu of, and we want the pedestrian access easement.
Well, that's kind of the.
I feel like that's a fair, instead of trying to push for.
Now, I know, sorry, I cut in here. I know it came across for a brief minute. Are we increasing the fee in lieu of? Because, right now it seems like it's too acceptable that they're just going to run for it instead of giving up the property.
We eventually will need to increase it, but we can't increase it until we get the plan adopted.
Okay.
So basically, he's trying to skirt in under the old plan. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. This would skirt in under the old plan, not necessarily the new plan. And I don't think that's a calculation that he necessarily made. He came to us about maybe a year ago, originally with this plan. At the time, he was proposing it to be a PUD, I believe. And at the time we reviewed it, we took a look at it, we recommended a couple of things, one of which was that we accept the fee in lieu of, and that we also wanted trail connections through there. So basically we're saying, okay, fine, we still want the trail connections through there, and we still want the fee in lieu of.
Now, I see it'd be good to demarcate where their property is, so we get as much trail access as possible. But seems like a fair trade to me. Looking at this plan, they got rid of all their little parks, right? And then they
have like little postage kind of things here and there.
Yeah, and then the responsibility came into question of who takes care of it, and all that stuff. So that,
right, and we had proposed that there be a moratorium, that we'd not have to take care of that.
Yeah,
and the response back to that was the city doesn't have the ability to do that.
I feel like it's more respectful. It'd be pretty cool if we could get, a pretty good path through there. I don't know what this open space is. It's like a peninsula that comes down.
A lot of that, I believe, is pretty heavily sloped.
Okay.
Kathleen, are you familiar with that parcel up there where it says open space?
Yeah, that's all down the slope. The little peninsula there on the left, and the one up above. And, that's the one kind of probably downside to all this is that, now all these, well, I don't know how many homes are proposed, but, they won't have a neighborhood park over here. Unless, again, this future planned park is kind of just on the borderline there to the west on the south of Vista Loop. So when that develops, I guess you could put a park there, but you'd also have to acquire some property to do that, because presumably if they develop the stuff that's to the west, there's some apartments over there already that already got developed. You see those? I don't know if you're familiar with those, but there's apartments anyway. Those, there's only kind of a narrow island in between the apartments and this other development there as to where a park could go. And if that got developed, it wouldn't end up having very much land. They would probably only have to donate less than probably half an acre to an acre or something, which isn't big enough for a neighborhood park. So anyways, it's, we don't have a plan yet, and I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but yeah, those, it does kind of create some just, different challenges for trying to provide these people parkland, and having the trail, it would be a minimal improvement for them. I'm sure they want something.
Yeah, if we were to hold out for parkland, we might want to take a look at the lots that are running. The triangle of development that's along Highway 26, there's a blue pond area, I believe, down off a cul-de-sac there, right next to 26. You'll need to slide that over a little bit, Sarah. Okay, right there. So then there's lot number single digits. I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, right along what's listed as Ortiz Street. That's pretty flat. And then that also backs up to some additional flat property that when that develops, maybe we can leverage a little bit more off of that, kind of along the lines of what's happening out at Deerfield, or Deer Point, sorry. So if we want to say, no, we don't want the fee in lieu, we would prefer these lots, we could do that. Not hearing a lot of comments.
I'm sorry, I cut out. What did you say?
I said maybe one option, if we want to turn away the fee in lieu and ask for property, there's about 8 lots along Ortiz Street that backs up to open space that will one day be developed that's pretty flat. That might be an option for us.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff like that. I'm a little, like I said, I mean, I'm not biased. I'm sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied because I heard someone say that an acre of land was not big enough for a park, and that just seems like a little bit off. But whether they, I just think it needs to be not. I don't care if we have the. Sorry, my brain is fried for the day. I've dealt with too many kids and too many people today. If we keep the in lieu of versus the land, then we need to make it so it's not appeasing to them, where they can't make money. It kind of, so I'm a techie, so I'm going to bring a little tech into it. It's kind of like the lawsuit over Apple and Samsung. When the judge slaps Samsung's hand, they slap their hand and says, you can't do this anymore. You need to pay Apple this. But they were literally making billions on the Droid line, of which carried most of the Apple, carried the Apple screen, the Apple camera. They're making billions on it. So when they got their hand slapped for a couple million, they're like, okay, but we can still sell the phone. There was no punishment there. So I mean, it's the same thing here. There needs to, if they're going to take the pay, then they need to pay. They don't just get their hand slapped and walk away with a few $100,000 where they only paid $1,000. If that makes sense. or they just need to give up the land. You know, make them really think about it. Don't make it an easy process for them.
Well, in that case, I am open to a motion if somebody wants to make one as far as what you want to do, ask for land or fee in lieu of.
The only comment I had,
All I
Don,
would ask,
is that those lots that you pointed out are also closer to the apartments. I mean, it's kind of puts it center, at least more central to the population on that side of 26.
it definitely does.
I mean, 26 is that's a 55-mile-an-hour barrier.
Yeah.
Unless we build a tunnel or a bridge. You know,
You're not going across.
even the comment of looping the trail system, I mean, it's a dead end for, you know, until somebody puts some money up for a tunnel or a bridge. So anyway, that's my comments.
My comment is that the land would be worth a lot more than the in lieu of at this point. Am I not correct?
Yes, it probably would be. Yes.
It would be worth extremely a lot more.
Yeah.
I believe it's entirely the ratios.
What was that last one? I'm sorry. I still got my own two yelling in my ear.
Oh, Makoto was saying that, yes, definitely the land will be worth more than the fee in lieu of.
Well, yeah, and that's why I said we either need to make it equal to or a little bit above if they want to pay the fee to keep the land. You know,
Right,
because
but
then at that point they're gambling on whether or not the house values are going to go up and they're going to be able to make that money back, or they're saying, okay, well, let's not gamble, let's just take the for sure bet.
Right, but we don't have the ability to change the fee quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, then definitely the land in lieu of the fee then.
Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
Make a motion to say land instead of a fee.
Is there a second?
I second.
Can we?
So the
can we
motion
think about
is-
adding something to that too as well, not just do it through singular motions, but a few requirements in this, or like per
What was
se,
that,
like
Makoto?
if we want to have access and easement for continuing the trail as well.
I would love to see that.
So some kind of easement access, you know, along the path that has been charted out that closely relates to it.
So what you're asking for is an amendment to the motion. The
Yes.
motion has been made for land instead of fee in lieu. It's been seconded. Makoto has requested an addition to that motion of requesting the pedestrian access easement also. David, you made the motion. Are you willing to accept that amendment?
Absolutely, yeah. It didn't even dawn on me. I heard we talking about it, and I thought it was already part of that. But yeah, definitely continue on the trail. That's one of the things that irritate me about the Tickle Creek trailer is you got to hop on, hop off of it.
Right.
So yeah, definitely keep that trail going.
Okay, and Mary, you made the second. Are you comfortable with that amendment?
Yeah, I thought it included the trail as well.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion that now consists of land as opposed to fee in lieu and pedestrian access easement across the open space area to allow for trail development.
What?
Is that everybody's understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on that? Sarah, were you able to
I
get
guess
that?
it should be, the trail should be more specifically laid out so that, you know, I don't know what the dotted line is that kind of goes along the ridge, if that's part of the property or if it's just within the square.
Well, my understanding is that it would be consistent with the proposed master plan.
Okay.
Is that everybody else's understanding?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Sarah, you got that motion?
Yes, I
Yes,
will
sir.
re-listen. I will always re-listen to the recording to make sure I get it right, but I will probably run it by you, Dawn, before I send it out.
All righty. So we have a motion. It's been seconded. It's been amended. The amended has been accepted. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That guy can cross the street.
Motion carried. All righty. Last item on the agenda then.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing here for a second. Last item on the agenda, and then I do have some staff updates that aren't listed. So, you know, at the last board meeting, you had requested that we revisit the issue of dogs at large. It's, you know, been brought to your attention that there's been an issue in Bornstedt. I do know that Eric had a little bit more updated information that I did. I was kind of happy to hear that this has been elevated a little bit to a supervisor at PD, and really I think this is where it belongs. And I'm not sure that, you know, what you guys want to do in addition to the enforcement of our ordinances. But I do know, based on what Eric told me, he didn't mention it tonight, but I have seen it elsewhere too, that there was a bite incident in Bornstedt Park since your last meeting. So, you know, this is really a discussion for you to have if you think there's more that the Parks Board could do. I did send out in the Sandy Source newsletter, some of it got edited out. I had a little longer piece in there, but they didn't have all the space for it. But basically just a reminder about our ordinances and leash laws and so forth. You know, how much impact that has is uncertain. So it's really up for discussion for you.
And I thought I saw a hand go up, Rachel.
Got it. I looked at Sandy laws. I looked it up really quick to find out about the leash law, and there isn't a link on the leash. So yeah, probably well within their rights to put this 50-foot rope around their dog's neck and then tie it around a tree and let dog run around. I don't understand how we can change the law or make it very specific, because I think that if it's not specific in regards to that, how are we going to enforce it? And really quick, I don't know if I missed something, but I didn't realize this meeting was going to be over 2 hours long, and I've got little babies that need to go to bed.
Not a problem. I was trying to get things wrapped up here a little bit too. We can continue the discussion, or we can, you know, entertain a motion, or we can, you know, give some staff direction. If we want to do anything about changing the law, we can make a recommendation that a length of leash be assigned, which seems reasonable to me.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the law. It'd be a city ordinance, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's an ordinance, and I will also research it. Maybe that is defined on a larger scale, just not specified in the ordinance. Leash may determine a length.
I mean, it's one of those things that we can make, and we can make it or amend the city ordinance all we want. But I mean, the problem is that this is, you know, something you'd have to hear from Officer Moody on. It's not really an enforceable one, because the dog's not going to be there probably by the time he has a chance to even respond to it.
Right.
And so actually catching the person in the act is not going to be a feasible. I mean, we can make the ordinance all day long. We can ask to change the ordinance all day long, but, you know, unless we get a couple more code enforcement officers that can, you know, race over there as soon as the call comes in, then it's not going to do us any good.
I have a question. Does our code enforcement circumsede county's code enforcement?
I believe that on issues like this, it is a city ordinance.
I gotta go, guys. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I gotta go.
No problem.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Bye, Rachel.
If you're asking if our code enforcement would override the county's code enforcement, that'd be a no. the county code enforcement would always stand above ours. We could make ours better than the counties, but we cannot make it any less than the counties. It'd be the same
Right,
as the county can't make it anything less than the states.
Right, I believe we can make it more rigid, we just can't make it looser.
Okay,
So if what you're asking, if the county already has a 6-foot rule, then we can just enforce that rule.
right.
Was the,
I mean, I've never
appendix-
done this with my dog. So I mean, I've never had to look at the dog ordinance for the city for the city or the county. I mean, I'm a responsible pet owner, so.
was the person,
I'll clarify this with Officer Moody, that what he's specifically able to enforce in this situation, and I will give you a follow-up to that.
Sarah, would it be possible to have Officer Moody attend our next meeting?
I can certainly ask him.
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Poor guy's already so overworked. I don't know if he has the time for it.
was the person identified? The owner, pet and owner?
No,
Are they what?
The dog owner was not identified.
Dog, but yeah.
Okay, what action,
Do you know how
what
much
course
worse
does the
that
committee
was?
want to take on this? I would
Should
suggest that we
probably
have Sarah
table
go
it.
ahead. Yeah, I
Officer
think we
Moody.
take it back up again. And have Sarah do a little bit more digging with Officer Moody and maybe invite him if he's available. That sound fair to everybody?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds fair to me.
Okay. All righty. Sarah, you had a staff update?
Yeah, super quick. So we will very shortly have a completed collaboration with the Oregon Trail School District to have some pickleball courts available to the public over at the new Cedar Ridge property. Carol Cohen's been working really hard on that. It's been a very popular request. She was able to get donations and volunteer time and, put in some at least interim pickleball courts. It's probably one of the most requested questions we get right now. So that's kind of a nice development, and Carol's good at getting the donations and the volunteer times at a very low cost for the city, and those will be open to the public during certain times. So great news. So some other really good news. As you know, the city's in the middle of the budget approval process. At Monday night's meeting, my apologies for the barking dog in the background. She's been doing that the entire meeting. What's that?
I said, put her on a leash.
Yeah, well.
She's probably commenting about the leash.
Yeah. She wears a leash that she doesn't like it. That's for sure. Okay, so. Yeah, I know you are. So council was able to approve, and I think Kathleen is still listening, $75,000 additional for the parks maintenance fund than what was originally budgeted. So that's really good news for parks. I'm in the process of writing a grant for the regional trails project for the Sandy River connection from the Sandy Community Campus down to the Sandy River. So cross our fingers. Yeah, crossing our fingers on that. Community garden repairs continue to be challenging. I'll just leave it at that. We can talk about it at another meeting. Unless you have questions about it and you want more information. That is what I had.
Very good. Anybody else have any comments for the good of the order?
Yeah, that's really cool that Carol Cohen spent time and energy doing that. It has been a lot of people requesting pickleball courts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and great job. That's really cool that the council devoted